Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to work on this monstrosity, also known as the positive cable for the Hyundai Santa Fe. Now this will specifically work for the 3.3 Lambda from the 2007 to 2010 year models. I'm not too sure how this will work for the 2.7 liters. I believe it's a 2.7 liters, or the GFS or Sport models. The vehicle we're specifically working on today is the 2008 Santa Fe Limited 3.3 Lambda engine. So any other variations, models, years, it could be a different procedure or a different part number altogether. I'm going to go through step by step on how to change this out. I do not have any pages from the service manual or torque specs to go with. Everything we're doing today is pretty much by knowledge and hand tightening, if not just snug, so just enough to where you know it's not going to loosen. So other than that, let's get to it. Alright, so the engine that we're working on today is the 3.3 V6 Lambda engine. The battery is going to be on the right side here. If you have a different engine type, such as the 2.7, I believe, it's going to be a little different. So I'm not sure how closely they're related, but this is going to work for the 3.3 engines. Anyway, so the battery is right here on this side. This is the positive, this is the negative, shoots straight into the chassis. First, we're going to want to disconnect the battery. Alright, so you'll have two 10 millimeters here. And I don't know the torque specs for these. I'm not going to go over the torque spec for these, just to make this quick and simple, as I don't have the service manual for this vehicle like my other vehicles. So we're just going to go pretty much hand tighten everything, unless it's a bigger bolt like the battery bolt. So 10 millimeters for these, it'll be hand tightened. You'll need to remove the battery. This is a 13 millimeter right down here. You may need an extension to get that out. So 10 millimeters and 13 millimeter to get the battery out. Alright, so the battery's out. So the positive cable is this left one here. As you can see, it's got two tabs connecting it to the battery tray. These need to be depressed this way towards the battery tray. Once you do, you'll just simply lift up and it will separate from the battery tray like so. After you do that, to make things a little easier, we'll need to disconnect the battery tray from the chassis. You got four there, and then one hidden up here connected to the airbox. These will be 13 millimeter, and this one I believe is a 10 millimeter. Alright, now that we got our four bolts out and the one up top, we'll just need to take our tray, kind of slide it to the left a little bit because it is stuck under the filter still. The filter's not going to really move much for you. So take it, tilt it to the left, and start pulling up, and it's going to slowly disconnect itself like that. You can take this guy, toss him to the side, and as you can see, we have our whole compartment here. We can now follow the line. So this goes up to the fuse box, this side goes down way underneath. You may need to remove this. I don't know if you can actually. No, you can't. It's all welded on. So this is going to snake its way down there underneath, and we'll follow that later on, but that's how you'll release that battery tray. Alright, so now that the battery tray's out and we can trace everything, so we have the positive cable here, and we'll do the easiest one first, which will be connected to the fuse box here. Just take the tab, lift up, take the lid, set that to the side. On the bottom left here, we got two different cables. They're both 10 millimeters. Now, you may have a hard time trying to get your fingers in there, trying to get these little nuts out. So a little tip or a trick that you can use, just grab the bottom of the cable, lift up a little bit, and then you just got to take it right off the top. Once you do that, just take your cable, slide it off, and that's it. Do the same thing to the other cable, and that's the only part for the end you'll have to worry about there. Now, once those are off, you'll have these two little tabs. You can either cut them off, or what you can do is you can grab your little socket here, like a 10 millimeter, push it on the bottom. You'll hear it click. Let's see here. Like so. You hear it click. It'll click, and it'll push that right out. So there's a little tip. You can't really do it to this one because the chassis is underneath it, so you may have to cut this one out there. And now that we got the connections undone off the fuse box, we're going to come back down here. The next one we'll do is going to be right under this little panel. You follow the wire and it's going to bring you to this little connection right here. Now as you can see, this panel or this connector, it's got a little tidbit there that sticks in that hole. Now you don't have to undo it because the connector we're taking off, it's not connected to that little dilly, but it may make it easier. I took it off so that y'all could see this a little easier. So to undo this connection, there's a little tab on the bottom right there. You'll press that in and you'll pull it out just like that. Alright, so now that we got the fuse box and that little connector undone, the next two areas are going to be the alternator and the starter. As you can see, the wire comes down here and then it splits off. One goes down to the starter underneath, which will have to go underneath the vehicle for that, and then the next one goes along the front of the engine, and that leads to the alternator. So following this line, right underneath the coolant hose, you'll have this little clip right here. Just push that tab down and lift up. It's connected to a middle frame that's attached to the engine. Just pull down, lift up. Coming down here, same thing. Got another connector here. Pull down, pull up. And if we follow the line a little bit farther down, let's see, as you can see, we have this little plastic piece here, or rubber. Mine's torn, and then you have the thread with a nut on it. This is the power supply for the alternator, and we'll have to undo that. But this space is so cramped, you're not going to be able to reach in there. So what we're going to have to do is remove this fan and then remove this fan. So we have to remove this first fan here in order to get that fan out. So we'll remove this one, undo that, slide it, and then come back out to give us room. They're both held on by two 10mm bolts. The first one is down here, right there, and then the second one is right here. The bottom of each fan is held on by a little hinge that can just be lifted up. So once those two bolts are undone, it'll either drop a little bit or you can just slide it right up. So we're gonna go ahead and do that here. Alright, so we got our bolts out and our fan is loosey-goosey. So three other things is we'll need to disconnect the fan connector on both fans. So it's just a little tab on the bottom. You'll click in and then just pull it out. You'll have a little connector right here in between the fans. You'll have to both disconnect this and pull it out of the slot. This one is, the connection is, it's kind of dumb because you do have to undo it, but it's on the top here. Just push down and pull out. So we're going to disconnect that as well. And then our last one is this connector right here. The tab is on the top up there, so pull that down and then pull out, just like so. Now whenever you do this, this is going to be a super tight fit between this radiator hose and that radiator hose. Usually you just take out those hoses and, you know, be done with it, but we're trying to do this as easy as possible. So we're just going to take this, and it may rub up against the radiator. It shouldn't. You should have plenty of clearance. It will be tight, but you can just slide it out. You'll have to kind of take the hose here, scoot that back, and you'll have to take this part of the hose. As you can see, it's blocking the way. You'll have to just kind of scoot that up there as well, and then slide that right out. Now just a little tip for y'all here: if you do need this fan to scoot over a little more but your hose is in the way, there's a worm drive right here. Just unscrew it and slide it out. Make sure your coolant isn't too full so that it floods out. If it is, that's okay. You know, open up your little gap here, unscrew that, maybe you get a turkey baster and slurp some out, so that it's low enough so that when you do disconnect it, not a whole lot comes out. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this little drive here so that I can just get this all the way and I ain't got to deal with no small amount of space there. Alright, now that this radiator fan is out, we can come over here. I went ahead and took this fan and I scooched it over the coolant hoses up. You may have a little fun time trying to scoot it over because there's a hump here, but you can still get it across. Now that it's across, we have complete freedom in here. The little, see here, I know it's going to be kind of hard to see, but there is the thread that this cable sits on right here. It was right like so. So you'll undo that little nut, which is a 13 millimeter. Undo that one, and then there's a little connection here. It's going to be kind of hard to see because of how deep it is in, but it's just a simple little pull tab. I'll have to show you the other cord. Yeah, let me just do that so that y'all aren't blinded here. So bottom of this cord here, so this is that connection here. It's just a little simple pull tab that you'll click and pull up, disconnect it. There's also another connection like this one right here at the way bottom. That one you may have to go underneath, but you might still be able to reach it from way down in there. Just feel around, you'll be able to feel it and unplug it. Alright, so got those last two done. Come here, where you at? Here we go. So on this last connector, I do want to show y'all there's a little popper on that, so just watch out for that. And I do want to just say something real quick. Yeah, I know that looks bad. It's not actually that bad. My radiator fins were not damaged from this job. They've actually been damaged for a while. It was actually from changing the alternator itself, which if y'all ever change that, there's no freaking room to do that at all. And just to get it, because you have to pretty much do the same thing that we're doing now, both fans and all that. But yeah, that's why those are damaged. Not from this job. Alright, so we're at the front of the vehicle facing the driver's side. Go underneath here, we have the starter. It's pretty much almost right underneath the alternator. So there's a cover to the starter. There is a bolt right here. I believe there's a bolt right there, but I'm not too sure if there is. Mine's missing. There's one right here towards the butt right there. And then, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but towards the top, that little slab sticking out, that's another nut right there. They're all 10 millimeters. But once you loosen them, that starter cover will come off. The cable for that is going to be right there, and it's going underneath this shield. So we're going to take the shield off. Alright, so we got that little cover off. Now here comes the fun part. So to get this off, you're going to take this cover, slide it forward to get it off that little screw there. You're gonna angle it. Let's see here if I can get it with one hand. Nope. There we go. So take this, scoot it forward, angle it down like that, and then just slide down past the exhaust like so, and that's how you're gonna remove that. Set that to the side. Alright, so we're back at the top of the vehicle. You can do this from the top or the bottom. If you do it from the bottom, you're going to have a lot less room. If you do it from the top, you can actually kind of feel around, but it still may be kind of difficult. But I'm going to show y'all what this looks like so y'all can actually see where this stuff is at. So, deep inside here. So, here's the starter. Alright. Now at the top, right there, that is the push-in clip. You'll just have to unclip that. I believe the push tab's at the top. Towards the bottom of it, let's see, right here. So right there, that is going to be the twist off. That's the power supply for the starter. I believe it's a 13 millimeter. I got to get closer and I'll confirm. But those will be the last two connections for the positive cable. There is a popper as well. Let's see, that popper is gonna be right there, I believe. I can't see nothing. Let's see here. So y'all can see right there. That popper is gonna be right here on that little panel right there. Alright, so we're back underneath again. Show y'all the starter real quick. So the nut for it is actually much is easier to access from the bottom of the vehicle, and This nut here is a 12 millimeter actually. So there's the nut off the starter. Take this wire and get off there. All right, and that's the last connection. We can now start installing. All right, so we slid the old one out and we got our new one here. Now, one thing I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all is every connection, like for the alternator, so to speak, or actually this is the starter, okay, for like the starter or even alternator, it don't matter, make sure you put dielectric grease on these. It'll help connectivity, and also it'll put a layer of rust protectant over it so that, you know, the atmosphere doesn't get to it and rust it out. So I'm going to go ahead and start installing every single one of these connections. What I would do is for like these connections here, just hand tight them. It doesn't have to be super tight, but just tight enough to where they're not going to come off. And I would install them probably the hardest to the easiest. That's what I would do. In the opposite direction of how we uninstalled them, just reinstall them in the reverse order. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this back together after that chaos, and start her up and put everything together, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so we got everything back on here. Of course, you're gonna, like I said earlier, start from the hardest to the easiest. So start at the starter, then the alternator, slide your fans over, take care of the panel, and then finally you'll clip it onto the plate after you've reinstalled that and whatnot. So first things first, as you can tell here, the positive cable here, it looks completely different than the version that you probably just replaced. That's because after a while they make revisions, they update things. So first things first, these terminal connectors, way different. So we look at the old one here and we can tell that it's completely different style and whatnot. And no, this is not an aftermarket part. This is a OEM Hyundai part. So the reason they changed these out is these actually wore out really quick, caused some problems, probably like the ones that you're experiencing now, and it drastically reduced power to the engine. So, but that's pretty much it. That you're pretty much done with the installation there. Do the positive first, then the negative on the battery cable. Don't do it the negative and then the positive. That'll cause some issues. But other than that, you're pretty much finished there. Alright, now that it's all set and done, we can just go ahead and test our vehicle, make sure everything is connected right. If you do start your vehicle and you have a battery icon somewhere around this area, it's going to mean one of three things. Either one, your battery's dead, and that sucks. Two, it could be you did not connect one of the connectors properly, whether that be the starter, the alternator, or just the battery connector. Or three, what could happen is, you know, that I don't know if it's 2006 to 2010 or 2007 to 2010, but the Hyundai Santa Fe's had a recall for a leaking valve gasket cover where oil would get on the alternator, and that would pretty much kill the alternator. Now, in my experience or circumstance, I didn't have a battery icon before I replaced the cable. Now, after I replaced the cable, I did, and of course, I tested the alternator, I made sure the battery wasn't dead, everything was working fine, and everything was connected as it should have been, but it ended up being the alternator because, you know, the recall and whatnot. And even though it was still outputting, you know, 14 and some odd volts, and it was working properly, it was still in the process of dying. It's just the fact that the old power supply was worn out, and as soon as I replaced the new one, it wasn't until it was able to fully deliver that power to its necessary components, because the old one was faulty, couldn't get the correct power to certain components. And so after this new one was replaced, it was able to get power to those components. It was able to sense that the alternator was dying, and that's how I had the battery light. So if that does happen, and you know you did it right, alternator is putting out the correct amount, it just it could be that recall. So that's just a little tip I want to leave y'all there. But other than that, you're pretty much set to go. Let's start her up here, and she's running good. All right. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I know it's something a little different than what I usually do, but I hope it still helps y'all out. All right, well, that's all for this video. I hope to see y'all next time. Y'all have a good one, and until then.